she told me. My friends come first, you're just second. I vanished that night without a word. Days later, she showed up at my new place and got the shock she deserved. The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing proofs in my cramped home office, squinting at contact sheets through my ancient magnifying loupe. I'd been grinding for 3 years as a freelance photographer in Phoenix, taking whatever gigs I could find, quinceañeras, corporate headshots, real estate listings, slowly building a portfolio that meant something to me. That afternoon, the Meridian Gallery called to tell me they'd selected my desert landscape series for their upcoming exhibition. 24 pieces would hang in downtown Phoenix's most prestigious gallery space for an entire month. I sat there staring at my beat-up camera bag, hardly believing it was real. This was my shot, the break I'd been working toward since moving to Arizona with nothing but 2 cameras and a dream of making it as an artist. I immediately called Megan, my girlfriend of 2 years, practically bouncing with excitement. Babe, you're not going to believe this. The Meridian Gallery wants my desert series. We're talking about a real exhibition, opening night, the whole thing. I was already planning our celebration dinner at Dominic's Steakhouse, the upscale place we'd walked past dozens of times but never splurged on. I'd even picked out a bottle of champagne that would stretch my budget but felt worth it for this moment. That's great, Jake, she said, but her voice sounded distracted. I could hear laughing in the background, the familiar voices of the Phoenix Five, her tight-knit group of friends who treated their social calendar like military operations. So I was thinking we could finally try that steakhouse tonight. My treat. This is huge for us. Oh, tonight's Wine Wednesday, she said without hesitation. The girls have been planning this for weeks. We're doing a themed night, French wines and cheese pairings. Sophia found this amazing sommelier who's going to teach us proper tasting techniques. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Megan, this is my first gallery showing ever. Can't Wine Wednesday happen next week? Jake, you know how important these nights are to us. The Phoenix Five has been together since college. We don't just cancel on each other. I was standing outside the gallery now, watching other photographers carry their work inside for consideration. Young artists like me, hungry and determined, treating every opportunity like it might be their last. So celebrate with Connor or someone. You guys can have your photographer talk. I wouldn't understand half of it anyway. The dismissal in her voice cut deeper than I expected. Connor was my only real friend here, another transplant from Ohio who understood the struggle of building something from nothing. But this wasn't about technical camera talk. This was about sharing the biggest moment of my career with the person who was supposed to matter most. Megan, I've been working toward this for 3 years. Saving every dollar, taking every job, sleeping 4 hours a night editing photos in that tiny spare room. This matters to me. And my friends matter to me. They've been there through everything. My dad's heart attack, losing my job last year, all of it. They're my chosen family, Jake. I watched a successful-looking photographer in an expensive leather jacket direct his assistant while hanging a massive landscape print. Everything about his setup screamed established career, gallery connections, financial stability. Everything I was trying to build. What about us? What are we building together? The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. When she finally spoke, her voice carried an edge that made my chest tighten. Jake, let's be realistic here. My friends come first. They're permanent. You're just... She paused, and I could picture her gesturing with her free hand the way she did when explaining something obvious to someone slow. Your backup. They'll still be here when you pack up your cameras and leave town like every other photographer who thinks Phoenix is going to make them famous. The words hit like a physical blow. 3 years of late-night conversations about our future, weekend trips to small towns where I photographed desert wildflowers while she read beside me, quiet mornings where she'd make coffee while I edited photos, all of it reduced to backup. I'd been carrying an engagement ring in my camera bag for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment, the perfect desert sunset or gallery acceptance to make the proposal magical. The ring box felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds suddenly. Got it, I said quietly. Enjoy Wine Wednesday. Don't be dramatic, Jake. We can celebrate this weekend. Maybe Sunday brunch with everyone, Everyone. Always everyone. Never just us. I hung up and stood there in the Phoenix heat, watching real artists prepare for real careers while I realized I'd been living in a fantasy. That night, I ordered Chinese takeout and sat alone in our shared loft apartment, staring at my acceptance letter while wine glasses clinked and laughter echoed from whatever trendy spot the Phoenix 5 had chosen for their sacred gathering. The next evening, I returned from the gallery to find our shared loft apartment empty except for 5 large boxes stacked against the dining room table like brown cardboard monuments to misplaced priorities. Each box bore the logo of Phoenix Custom Leather, and I could already guess what was inside before I tore open the first one. 5 matching leather jackets, each one custom-made with Phoenix 5 Forever embroidered across the back in metallic thread, complete with motorcycle graphics and individual names stitched below Phoenix wings. I pulled out the receipt tucked between tissue paper, $180 per jacket, totaling $897.50 for matching outfits. $897. I stared at that number while my mind automatically calculated how many corporate headshots I'd have to shoot to earn that much, how many early mornings photographing sunrise real estate listings, how many quinceañeras where I'd smile and pretend 15-year-olds throwing tantrums were adorable. This was the same woman who'd complained for months about my expensive camera equipment, who'd rolled her eyes when I'd saved for 3 months to buy a used telephoto lens, who'd questioned whether I really needed that external flash for indoor work. I held up Megan's jacket, running my fingers over the elaborate Phoenix design that stretched from shoulder to shoulder. The craftsmanship was undeniably beautiful, but it represented something that made my stomach turn. She dropped nearly $900 on costume uniforms for her friend group's upcoming motorcycle rally weekend, the same weekend as my gallery opening that she'd apparently completely forgotten existed. According to the receipt, the order had been placed 6 weeks ago, right around the time I'd first mentioned my submission to the Meridian Gallery. While I'd been planning our celebration dinner, she'd been coordinating group costumes like they were preparing for battle rather than a recreational ride to Flagstaff. I walked through our apartment, seeing everything differently now. The expensive wine glasses she'd bought for Wine Wednesdays but never used with me. The matching throw pillows she'd ordered because Sophia had the same ones. The specialized cheese board set for their themed gatherings that remained off-limits during our quiet dinners together. Everything revolved around maintaining her status within the Phoenix 5's elaborate social ecosystem. I'd been funding her friend group's activities while being treated like an outsider at my own relationship. The realization hit me with stunning clarity: I wasn't Megan's boyfriend. I was her patron, bankrolling a lifestyle that had no space for me beyond the checks I wrote and the apartment I provided. Instead of confronting her when she returned from jacket planning sessions with the group, instead of demanding explanations or begging for priority in her life, I made a different choice. I opened my laptop and began researching apartments across town in Scottsdale, using the same methodical approach I applied to planning photo shoots. Within an hour, I'd found it: a perfect studio space above Henderson's Vintage Books, a converted loft with massive windows that provided natural lighting for indoor photography and enough room for both living and working. The rent was actually lower than my half of our shared place, and the elderly owner seemed thrilled to have a tenant who appreciated the space's artistic potential. I scheduled a viewing for the next morning, my first step toward building something real. The Phoenix 5's 3-day motorcycle rally to Flagstaff became my window of opportunity, and I approached the escape with the same precision I used for complex photo shoots where every detail mattered and timing was everything. While they spent their final week coordinating matching helmets, renting a luxury RV that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and creating color-coded packing lists that rivaled military operations, I quietly dismantled my entire life from under their noses. Their obsession with rally perfection provided the perfect cover for my methodical exodus. During my lunch breaks from Phoenix Camera Works, where I worked part-time selling equipment to tourists and aspiring photographers, I made calculated trips to my new studio apartment above Henderson's Vintage Books. The elderly owner, Mr. Henderson, had been thrilled to rent to someone who appreciated the space's artistic potential and promised to respect the building's quiet atmosphere. First went my photography equipment. The vintage Leica my grandfather had left me when he died, the digital cameras that represented years of saving every extra dollar, The telephoto lens Megan had criticized as wasteful spending when I could have been contributing to their group activities instead. Each piece of gear went into protective cases like I was preparing for the most important shoot of my life, which in a way I was. This was documentation of my independence, proof that I could exist outside the Phoenix Five's social ecosystem. Connor helped without asking too many questions, understanding that some decisions don't need lengthy explanations or justifications. He arrived with his pickup truck during his own lunch break from the auto shop, helping me move the larger items that defined my real life: my motorcycle that Megan always complained took up too much parking space, the darkroom equipment I'd assembled piece by piece from estate sales and online auctions, and the antique oak desk where I spent countless hours editing photos and planning shoots while she conducted conference calls about group dynamics and weekend logistics. We worked efficiently like a specialized moving crew, avoiding the afternoon hours when Megan typically returned from her job at the marketing firm to prepare for whatever Phoenix Five activity demanded her immediate attention and complete devotion. The timing had to be perfect because their group operated on schedules more rigid than airline departures, with backup plans for their backup plans and emergency protocols for social crisis management that would make corporate executives jealous. Connor understood the weight of what I was doing without making it dramatic or questioning my sanity. "You sure about this path?" he asked while loading my enlarger into the truck bed, wrapping it carefully in moving blankets. "Never been more sure of anything in my life," I replied, protecting my collection of vintage photography books that contained techniques and inspiration from masters who'd built careers through dedication rather than social networking. She made her choice crystal clear. "I'm just accepting reality." The night before their departure to Flagstaff, while Megan conducted final rally logistics via conference call with the Phoenix Five, discussing route optimization, meal planning, emergency contact protocols, and backup communication strategies, I packed my remaining personal belongings into 2 military surplus duffel bags. Clothes, toiletries, the engagement ring I'd never have the chance to use, and the leather portfolio containing my best prints from 3 years of grinding in Phoenix's competitive photography market. Everything that actually belonged to me, everything that represented my individual identity rather than my function as Megan's financial support system, fit into surprisingly little space. I waited until she fell asleep around midnight, exhausted from coordinating group activities and excited about their upcoming adventure that would provide endless content for social media documentation. Then I placed my apartment key on her nightstand next to a handwritten letter I'd spent hours perfecting, choosing each word carefully like composing the perfect shot. The letter was brief but complete. "Megan, you were right about your friends being there when I'm gone. I'm simply making your prediction come true. You won't have to worry about backup plans anymore. You'll have your permanent team exactly as you want it. I hope you and the Phoenix Five find everything you're looking for. Take care, Jake." I signed it with the same signature I used on photography releases, official and final. Then I turned off my phone, grabbed my helmet, and rode my motorcycle across town to my new life in Scottsdale, leaving behind 2 years of trying to fit into someone else's predetermined social structure. The ride through empty Phoenix streets felt like emerging from underwater, finally able to breathe again after months of holding my breath. For the first time in what felt like years, I could hear my own thoughts without the constant background noise of group chat notifications, social obligation planning, and the suffocating pressure to earn my place in someone else's chosen family. Monday morning brought a digital avalanche that would have been impressive if it weren't so predictable, like watching a natural disaster unfold in slow motion. The Phoenix Five returned from their Flagstaff rally to discover my key and letter, treating my departure like a 5-alarm emergency requiring immediate mobilization of their entire social infrastructure and crisis management protocols. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on to coordinate gallery details with the Meridian staff, exploded with 23 missed calls, 18 voicemails ranging from confused to hysterical, and a barrage of texts that escalated from confusion to rage to desperation in real time, like watching someone's mental breakdown documented through modern technology. Megan's messages alone filled my screen with increasing desperation. "Jake, what the hell is this letter supposed to mean? This can't be real," followed by, "This isn't funny anymore. Call me back right now or I'm calling the police to report you missing," and eventually deteriorating into, I can't believe you're being this childish and dramatic. We can work through whatever problem you think we have if you just communicate like an adult. But the Phoenix Five had deployed their full psychological warfare arsenal with military precision, with each member executing specific manipulation tactics they'd probably perfected on previous targets who dared to threaten their group dynamics. Ethan, the self-appointed group leader who worked in corporate sales and treated every social situation like a business negotiation, went for the masculinity angle with calculated aggression. Real men don't run away from problems like cowards. You're embarrassing yourself and Megan with this juvenile behavior. Fix this situation before you regret it permanently and lose the best thing that ever happened to you. Sophia, the group's emotional manipulator who worked in social work and treated relationships like complex chess games requiring strategic thinking, attempted the guilt trip approach with professional precision. You're destroying our entire group dynamic and hurting people who genuinely care about you. Megan's been crying for 2 days straight and can barely function. We've all invested so much time and emotional energy in you, and this is how you repay our friendship and acceptance. Ashley, who worked in public relations and viewed everything through a reputation management lens, went straight for character assassination with surgical precision. I always knew you were emotionally unavailable and selfish underneath that quiet artist act. Megan deserves someone who actually appreciates what an amazing woman she is, not some antisocial photographer who thinks he's too good for real relationships and genuine human connection. The coordination was sinister in its efficiency, like they'd activated a crisis management protocol specifically designed for situations where their group dynamics were threatened by outside forces or individual rebellion. They turned my disappearance into a group project, complete with assigned roles, strategic objectives, and probably scheduled check-ins to monitor progress on their Bring Jake Home campaign. When I didn't respond to their digital assault within 6 hours, they escalated to real-world interference that crossed every boundary I thought existed between personal relationships and stalking behavior that would make private investigators jealous. Ethan discovered my workplace through social media detective work and stormed into Phoenix Camera Works during peak afternoon hours, creating a scene in front of customers while demanding I fix this situation like a mature adult who takes responsibility for his actions and commitments. He stood near the vintage camera display cases, voice rising with each sentence, gesturing dramatically while tourists and photography students watched the spectacle unfold like unwilling audience members at a public breakdown. You can't just disappear on someone you've been with for 2 years without explanation or discussion, he announced loud enough for the entire store to hear, his voice echoing off the glass display cases. Megan's been worried sick about your mental health and safety. We all have. This isn't how relationships work in the real world where people communicate and work through problems together. My manager, Dave, a former military photographer who'd seen enough drama during his service to recognize manipulation tactics and boundary violations, stepped in before I could respond or escalate the situation further. Sir, you need to leave this establishment immediately or I'm calling security. This is a place of business, not your personal therapy session or relationship counseling center. When Ethan refused to leave voluntarily and continued his public performance about loyalty and commitment, Dave made the call to campus security from the nearby art school, who arrived to escort him out while he continued shouting about friendship and responsibility through the front windows like some deranged street preacher. But their campaign wasn't finished, not even close. When direct confrontation failed to produce their desired results, the Phoenix Five escalated to creating fake social media profiles using stolen photos to send me lengthy messages about friendship and forgiveness, showing up at photography locations I'd mentioned in previous conversations like stalkers with detailed surveillance notes, and conducting surveillance of my new building with military-like shift rotations that would have impressed actual security professionals or private investigators. 2 weeks after my escape, the Phoenix Five orchestrated an elaborate ambush intervention in my new building's lobby that demonstrated the terrifying depths of their collective obsession and complete inability to accept rejection or respect basic human boundaries. They'd manipulated Mr. Henderson, the elderly building manager who owned the vintage bookstore below my studio, by claiming they were planning a surprise celebration for my gallery success and needed building access to coordinate decorations and party planning for what they described as a long overdue recognition ceremony. The sweet old man, who genuinely cared about his tenants and wanted to support local artists in the community, had given them building access and even helped them carry supplies upstairs, completely unaware he was enabling what amounted to organized stalking behavior disguised as friendship intervention and emotional rescue mission. I returned from a late photography session documenting desert wildflowers for a Nature magazine commission, my camera bag heavy with equipment and memory cards full of sunset shots, to find all 5 members waiting in the lobby like some deranged welcome committee that had escaped from a psychological thriller. They'd transformed the space into something resembling a bizarre fusion of high school pep rally and hostage negotiation center, complete with poster boards covered in glitter and photographs from our relationship arranged in chronological order, professional recording equipment that suggested they planned to document this confrontation for posterity and social media distribution, and Megan wearing that custom leather jacket like armor against reality and rejection. The scene looked like they'd hired an event planner specializing in emotional manipulation, with color-coordinated outfits and what appeared to be a carefully rehearsed presentation designed to overwhelm my defenses through sheer visual spectacle and coordinated psychological pressure. Megan stepped forward holding color-coded index cards organized by topic and emotional impact level, her hands shaking slightly as she launched into a manifesto of reasons why we belong together, reading from notes that had obviously been workshopped by the entire group during multiple planning sessions and focus group discussions. Jake, we've analyzed everything that went wrong between us using relationship psychology principles, and we've developed a comprehensive plan to address each issue systematically and permanently, she began, her voice taking on the mechanical quality of someone reciting rehearsed lines from a therapeutic intervention manual. I realize I didn't properly prioritize our relationship, but that was due to insecurity and fear of vulnerability stemming from childhood abandonment issues, not lack of genuine feelings for you or appreciation of your artistic talents. Behind her, Ethan live-streamed everything to their private Instagram account with professional lighting equipment borrowed from his corporate sales presentations, documenting what they'd clearly titled, Operation Bring Jake Home, like this was some kind of romantic rescue mission rather than collective harassment requiring police intervention. Sophia held additional poster boards featuring timeline charts of our relationship highlights with detailed annotations and emotional analysis, while Ashley managed backup recording devices and what appeared to be a social media strategy for maximum emotional impact and viral potential across multiple platforms. When I attempted to escape to the elevator, feeling trapped and increasingly claustrophobic in the face of their coordinated assault, Ashley physically blocked the doors with her entire body while Sophia launched into theatrical sobbing about their chosen family falling apart because of miscommunication and pride preventing healthy conflict resolution. The performance was so rehearsed and coordinated that I realized they'd probably practiced this intervention multiple times in someone's living room, assigning roles and perfecting their emotional manipulation techniques like actors preparing for opening night at a psychological warfare theater. You can't just walk away from 2 years of shared memories and future plans without giving us the opportunity to fix what's broken, Ashley declared, spreading her arms across the elevator doors like a human barricade protecting them from my escape. We all invested so much emotional energy and time in this relationship. You owe us the courtesy of at least listening to our complete presentation before making any final decisions that affect everyone involved. The situation escalated beyond uncomfortable into genuinely frightening when Megan followed me into the elevator and hit the emergency stop button with desperate determination, trapping us in a confined space where she delivered a manic monologue about their detailed plans to travel Europe together and buy a house with a dedicated photography studio, plans that I realized were always centered around her friend's approval rather than our actual relationship or my individual artistic goals. I've been researching photography schools in Paris and photography workshops in Tuscany for months, she said, pulling out printed itineraries and budget spreadsheets organized in plastic folders. We could spend 6 months documenting European architecture and landscapes together. Sophia's cousin lives in Rome and could help us find affordable accommodations. Ashley knows people in the travel industry who could get us discounts on flights and rental cars. Ethan has business contacts in London who could help you network with gallery owners and art dealers. Every single plan involved the Phoenix Five's connections, their approval, their participation in our supposedly romantic getaway that sounded more like a group vacation with me as the designated photographer. Even her grand gestures of love and commitment required group consultation and logistical support from her chosen family, proving that nothing between us had ever been genuinely private or independent of their collective input and approval. Building security eventually intervened after Mr. Henderson realized he'd been manipulated and called for help, but not before the entire incident was recorded and shared in the Phoenix Five's group chat as evidence of their dedication to saving Jake from himself and his self-destructive isolation tendencies that were preventing him from accepting genuine love and friendship. 3 months later, karma struck the Phoenix Five with the devastating precision of a controlled demolition, beginning their implosion under the weight of real-life responsibilities and their own toxic dynamics that had been perfectly sustainable when directed at outsiders but proved catastrophic when turned inward against their own membership. Ethan received a promotion to regional sales manager requiring immediate relocation to Las Vegas within 6 weeks, a career opportunity that should have been celebrated by genuine friends but instead triggered the Phoenix Five's crisis management protocols designed to prevent any threats to their group cohesion. Instead of celebrating his professional success like normal friends would, the group treated his announcement like betrayal requiring emergency intervention and damage control measures that revealed the manipulative foundation of their entire social structure. Megan led passive-aggressive campaigns about abandoning the family for money and corporate success, organizing multiple group meetings to discuss loyalty versus opportunity, and creating elaborate guilt trip presentations designed to make Ethan feel selfish for pursuing career advancement that threatened their carefully maintained social ecosystem. They deployed the same psychological warfare tactics they'd used on me, but Ethan had witnessed their coordinated harassment firsthand and recognized the manipulation techniques for what they were: desperate attempts to maintain control over someone who was growing beyond their toxic influence. Meanwhile, my life flourished in ways I never expected during those suffocating years of trying to earn acceptance from people who viewed relationships as territorial competitions rather than mutual support systems. My gallery exhibition became a massive success, generating enough media buzz and positive reviews to attract commercial photography contracts from Arizona tourism boards, luxury desert resorts, and outdoor gear companies who wanted authentic landscape imagery rather than generic stock photos that conveyed no real sense of place or artistic vision. The steady income allowed me to expand my studio space significantly, purchasing professional lighting equipment, backdrop systems, and converting the entire upper floor of Henderson's building into a comprehensive photography workspace that other local artists regularly rented for their own portrait sessions, product photography, and creative projects. The rental income created additional financial stability while building a community of creative professionals who actually supported each other's work rather than competing for attention and social dominance within artificially constructed group hierarchies. But the most meaningful change came when I adopted Rex, a 3-year-old German Shepherd who'd lost his right rear leg in a car accident and had been deemed unadoptable by most potential families who couldn't see past his disability to his incredible spirit, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty to those who showed him genuine kindness. Rex became my perfect adventure companion for sunrise photography expeditions in the Sonoran Desert, where his 3-legged gait never slowed him down on rocky terrain and his natural instincts for wildlife movement and behavior patterns helped me capture shots I'd never have found alone during years of solitary exploration. Together, we explored hidden canyons and remote desert landscapes that most tourists never discovered, documenting the changing seasons, wildlife behavior, and geological formations that became the foundation for a coffee table book proposal that several publishers were already considering for their nature photography series. I also began teaching weekend photography workshops at my expanded studio, something I'd always wanted to do but couldn't because it conflicted with the Phoenix Five's sacred social calendar that demanded my presence at their endless gatherings, wine tastings, and manufactured social obligations that served no purpose beyond maintaining their group identity. Discovering a genuine passion for mentoring young photographers gave me purpose beyond just capturing images for my own portfolio. I was helping others develop their artistic vision and technical skills, creating a community based on shared interests and mutual growth rather than manufactured drama and social dependency that required constant maintenance and emotional labor. My students ranged from retired professionals exploring creative hobbies to serious college students building photography careers, and their genuine enthusiasm for learning reminded me why I'd fallen in love with photography in the first place before it became entangled with relationship obligations and social performance requirements. As the Phoenix Five continued fragmenting under the pressure of real-world responsibilities that exposed the artificial nature of their forced unity, my own life reached a stability I'd never experienced during those chaotic years of trying to maintain relationships built on obligation rather than genuine connection. Sophia announced her acceptance to graduate school in California for environmental science, a dream she'd apparently harbored for years but kept secret because the group had always mocked academic pursuits as pretentious and impractical compared to real-world experience. Ashley moved back to her hometown in Colorado to help care for her aging parents, finally admitting that her expensive Phoenix lifestyle had been financially unsustainable and emotionally draining for someone who genuinely preferred small-town life over manufactured urban social scenes. Even Megan's closest ally within the group began prioritizing her new relationship with a veterinarian who had no interest in joining group activities or participating in the Phoenix Five's elaborate social rituals that required newcomers to prove their loyalty through increasingly demanding tests of commitment and availability. The group's implosion accelerated when their Sacred Wine Wednesdays became exercises in passive-aggressive conflict resolution, with remaining members using each gathering to air grievances about loyalty, commitment, and abandonment that revealed years of suppressed resentment and competitive jealousy masked as friendship and mutual support. During this same period, I built something genuinely sustainable with Isabella, a wildlife veterinarian I met during a photography project documenting endangered desert species at the Sonoran Desert Preserve, where she conducted research on desert tortoise rehabilitation and release programs. Our meeting was serendipitous. I was photographing a tortoise release ceremony when Rex, always curious about wildlife, approached one of the tortoise enclosures with gentle interest that caught Isabella's attention as evidence of his well-trained nature and respectful behavior around vulnerable animals. She shares my love for animals and adventure but maintains her own independent life with fellow veterinarians who organize rock climbing expeditions to remote desert locations and volunteer medical missions to wildlife rehabilitation centers across the Southwest, activities that enrich their professional development while serving meaningful conservation purposes. Their relationship dynamics were everything the Phoenix Five wasn't: supportive without being possessive, independent without being distant, and focused on shared values rather than social performance and loyalty testing that served no purpose beyond maintaining artificial group cohesion. Isabella encouraged my photography career while pursuing her own ambitious goals of opening a wildlife rehabilitation center specializing in desert species recovery, and our conversations ranged from technical discussions about camera equipment and animal behavior to philosophical debates about conservation ethics and artistic responsibility that challenged both of us to think more deeply about our respective work. Our relationship developed organically around genuine shared interests rather than desperate attachment or manufactured interdependence, with Isabella encouraging my desert photography expeditions while I supported her research projects that often required long hours in remote locations studying animal behavior and habitat restoration techniques. We discovered that we both valued quiet mornings, meaningful work, and the kind of partnership where two independent people choose to build something together rather than losing themselves in codependent social structures that demanded constant attention and validation. Megan's final desperate attempt to reclaim control came 6 months after my disappearance, when she showed up at my studio with a purchased engagement ring and a rehearsed speech about being ready to choose me over everyone else and commit to building a life together based on mutual priorities and genuine love. The irony was devastating. She'd bought a ring to propose to me, reversing traditional gender roles in what she probably thought was a progressive romantic gesture, but the speech itself revealed that she still viewed our relationship as a choice between competing priorities rather than something that should naturally integrate into a healthy, balanced life. Standing in my studio surrounded by my best photography work, with Rex sleeping peacefully in his favorite sunny corner and Isabella's wildlife research books mixed with my photography manuals on the coffee table, I felt nothing but indifference towards someone who'd once controlled my entire emotional existence through guilt, manipulation, and the constant threat of social exile from her artificially constructed chosen family. The woman who'd reduced me to backup status was now begging for exactly the kind of commitment she'd spent 2 years making impossible, but I'd learned to recognize the difference between genuine love and desperate control attempts disguised as romantic gestures and heartfelt apologies. 6 months after my escape from the Phoenix Five's toxic ecosystem, I discovered through residual social media connections that the group had completely disbanded, with former members scattered across different states pursuing individual lives they'd been too codependent and psychologically enmeshed to explore before their forced separation. While Jake and Isabella planned their first joint photography expedition to document endangered desert wildlife for her research publication and his upcoming coffee table book, building a partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and independent growth rather than manufactured drama, territorial competition, and the exhausting emotional labor required to maintain relationships built on artificial foundations and manipulative control rather than genuine affection and healthy boundaries.